The topic today is going to be called Decumulation Tactics for those of you in the second floor of the wealth elevator going into the third floor with retirement in the near future. So it's mainly for folks in their 50s, which when I look down this roster of folks coming to Hawaii for this year's annual retreat, our group has generally skewed more towards folks in their 50s, at least from a median age standpoint. We always have some of the younger guys out there early on the road of financial independence. To be an accredited investor, you need a lot of time, and therefore that's how I theorize why most of the people coming, or the people investing for that matter, are in their late 40s and into their 50s. So today's topic is going to be very pertinent to that particular individual on that second or third floor of the wealth elevator. But before I do that, this is the year-end episode. I think I've been doing this for about 10 years ago. Started podcasting in 2016. Back then I had 11 rental properties and transitioning into that second floor of the wealth elevator, leaving the first floor. This convention is new to you as a late Christmas gift. Go ahead and email team@thewealthelevator.com. We'll hook you up with a free copy of my book, The Wealth Elevator, or MP3 version if you're like me and can't read too well. So a lot has changed over the last 10 years. Got a couple of daughters. Still got that old dog around. I had to put him in the kennel because he just makes too much noise because he scratches the ear too much. He's still around. By the way, at the end of this podcast, I'll have my daughter sing the Mele Kalikimaka song. Seen a couple of market cycles at this point, and I like to think a better investor with a little bit more experience going into the future. And I am blessed to be able to see so many different viewpoints and data points from you folks out there by interacting with a lot of you out there. As a final send-off for 2025, as we ring in the new year 2026, interest rates have come down a good amount off the peaks of a couple of years ago, and it does seem like the market is moving. I've seen some of our assets in our portfolio appreciate a good amount, definitely 10-15% off the bottoms, what we've seen, which right now, maybe it's too early to call, but maybe 2023, 2024 was the bottom of the commercial real estate market. But anyway, if you are new to our group, welcome. You can join our community at thewealthelevator.com/club. We're going to be opening up a new online community for more live webinars, more interaction. So if you're on the list, you'll be on the first announcements when that rolls out in early 2026. There's still time to join us in Hawaii, January 16th to the 18th in Honolulu. So if you're interested in that, go to thewealthelevator.com/hui8. We may be looking to do a mid-year, very abbreviated community event in Colorado this year because we now own some properties, have some deals out there. So we haven't met yet. Hopefully 2026 is the year that we get to interact in person, start to build that relationship, which I think separates us from other investment groups out there. So let's get going into this topic of decumulating your assets, drawing down your wealth as you reach the last quarter or last third of your life. It's a little bit of a morbid topic for anybody who's read the book by Bill Perkins, Die with Zero. The concept there is essentially you want to die with no money. Sure, we all worry about being on our deathbed and running out of money to pay for medical expenses, and that is what long-term care insurance, or what a lot of folks has deemed as the best practice, using life insurance with a long-term care rider attached on there. You guys work really hard out there to save your money, invest it, and growing. But what is it for? Yeah, sure, most of us have that traditional sense of giving $1 million or $2 million to each kid that we have. But what if you don't have kids? What if you don't want spoiled kids who inherit $2 to $3 million each or more, which I think is a little bit of overkill. Sure, you could bring them to Hawaii and you can have them take and run with the baton with the second, third generation and grow a real family office where they invest their funds into the future, and that's their job. But more than likely, 90% of wealth leaves a family in 2 to 3 generations because their third generation are just not sophisticated with money. They may be very good employees, but the problem is that third or fourth generation after, that's when things go off the rails. But anyway, you'll be dead at that point. So I digress there. I guess the point what I'm trying to make here is what a lot of people don't realize is in that last third of your life, or when you hit your 50s here, you're at this point where you really need to trade in your money for experience. Now, Bill Perkins talks about you really should have used that money to trade experiences earlier in your life so you can live off of the memories that you had from said experiences. If you're late to the party, whatever, you just do the best you can at this point. So today's talk is going to be about decumulating your assets in a smart way. Or, quite frankly, how do I spend this money without ruining it? So the first big idea here is what is decumulation? And the opposite of accumulation. Instead of saving and investing, something that you might have attached your self-worth, self-value, identity with, you're going to need to get off of that, right? It's no different than a lot of people when they retire from their high status job, their occupation, their title. It's always cool to go to a party and say you're a lawyer or you're a doctor, right? Gets a lot of respect. But when you're retired, nobody gives a rip what you did. Maybe nobody gives a rip right now. But certainly when you attach yourself to saving and being frugal and always finding the best deals and white knuckling your way to financial freedom, when you flip the switch there, you've lost a part of yourself, your identity. And that's your own thing. I'm not your guy's therapist. That's another part of it. I'm just here to help you with the math and the psychology of decumulation from other examples that I've seen from people who've come through our program, retired, and especially from first generation multimillionaires who've built their wealth on their own without their parents giving it to them. Now, I think this impacts a lot of folks. Baby boomers and Gen Z now hold about $80 trillion of assets, and every day about 10,000 people retire. Now, this is going to be ingrained in American society where there's a transfer of wealth going on. Combo that with we're living a little bit longer too, and the fact that retirement isn't as linear as it used to be. You need a smarter drawdown strategy that protects against any downturns if you are still in public equities, stocks, or even real estate. You're transferring over to more of a cash flow types of investments. And typically when you have cash flow, you have a little bit less of a appreciation potential or growth exposure, which at this point, when you've hit that certain scales of, for everybody it's a little bit different, $2 million, $4 million, $5 million or more, you might be perfectly fine with a 5% return as long as it pays you every quarter or every month. And how do you fit in any legacy gifts to your offspring or any gifting to any charities in there too? So let me point out a real world example, just not any particular one person, because I always try and keep these things private. Somebody that we've seen come through had a net worth of $4.2 million at age 42. And he's still working part-time because they're a badass at work, right? You get to a point in your career, especially in the senior portions, where you're able to do things with less hours, and because a lot of it is due to your expertise or your network in some occupations. And then when I have calls with people, I always want to understand what is your monthly or annual burn. This guy was spending just $3,000 a month, right? They had their house paid off with, they didn't have fancy cars, but they were constantly worrying about ruining it all. So they just didn't let any water out of the reservoir, which is silly because they had a pretty dang big reservoir at $4.2 million. In conversations, the goal was always freedom, right? I think that was where there was always similar alignment with myself, and I resonate with you folks out there. But he still felt like he was broke. And then, so we went through a discussion, or we'll call it a retirement simulation, where he just put on paper things he wanted. Like he wanted a lake house. He wanted to take a luxury trip with his wife. Of course, some of that may be on credit card points, right? But multiple 5-figure trip. He wanted to fund the 100K donor advisor fund, which is something that high net worth people will do to allocate the money to get the tax benefits today, but haven't necessarily placed that money into things where they want to see the money go yet. So we did these things. We went down his little laundry list, and while keeping his financial trajectory intact, he saw that where the numbers led him, and it essentially eased off and gave him permission to spend the money. And when you're building your net worth, or at least when I did it, I was very anal about tracking my spending. This is well before they had all these subscriptions that kind of vampire away your money. We flipped the script on this. What we're saying here is to have a spending plan as opposed to a spending budget. right? In this case, again, the concept is giving yourself permission to spend the money. And you can go through this exercise yourself. Just sit down, write down what you want. And part of this is thinking, what is your ideal lifestyle? Where do you want to live? What do you want to do? Most people in our group are type A individuals, and they are badasses at work or their business, and they want to continue doing that in some facet, or maybe a happy range would be 10 to 20 hours a week, and continue to doing that in a somewhat high leverage position. We don't have any Walmart greeters in our group. This is why I'm in some angel group communities. You'll see some ex-founders who hit that $5 to $10 million exit at least. They'll come back and advise other founders as a way to give back to the community and just stay mentally engaged. And they also get a piece of the action. Typically, they'll get maybe 5 to 10% of a partnership of a potential big payday down the road. But it feeds into their need for autonomy and to keep using their skill set, and for better or worse, have their egos still be validated. Nothing's wrong with that. To me, as long as you proclaim it to the world and you own it, nothing wrong with that. So here are some mistakes to avoid when doing this. The first is, you've heard of that 4% rule, right? It's been in traditional finance for quite some time. You just know that this is a guideline, right? To have $4 million at 4%, the idea is any dummy should be able to get 4%. I guess part of it is to account for big market corrections. We've seen the S&P 500 on fire these last several years. Just a matter of time before there's a big 20-30% correction. It happens every 8 to 12 years. Mistake number 2, waiting too long to enjoy life. You're going to be happiest and your most mobile now. Now, once you hit your 60s and 70s, now some people who do CrossFit may argue with me, but I'm just speaking generally here. I'm just stating the facts and reality. Because the quicker you realize that you're not going to be as healthy or not going to be able to do the things that you want to do today that in 5 years, the quicker that leads you to not delaying those big trips or hobbies. The third mistake, just thinking don't touch that principle and just living off the cash flow. This leads to underliving, and what you want to be moving more towards is drawing down and maybe eating into that principle, but just doing it strategically. And I would also insert here, my kids are young, so I don't have a little bit of more of a disconnection to this and the legacy. But to me right now, and again, I've been known to change my mind, but right now I'm like, if they had more than a couple $1 million each, that's really more than I ever had. And any more would just enact that law of diminishing returns. They'd just be a nincompoop. Now, like I said, run a retirement simulation on your own. Take a nice hike. We do this exercise in our retreat where we really envision what our ideal life is in the future. And of course, the magic is when you interact with other people and brainstorm other ideas and get into more conversations like that. When you're running this scenario, also keep in mind that there is a retirement curve where you plan for higher spending early because you're trading in money for experiences, vacation, lifestyle. It's a little bit lower in the middle and then higher again for healthcare later on. So keep that in mind. And then you also adopt this bucket strategy where there are 3 buckets. You have some money in the 0 to 3 years of cash and CDs. A lot of folks in our community will do closed-end funds, which are accessible through financial planners, or you can learn how to hack those yourself. I personally, for this bucket, I like life insurance. There's a couple benefits there. I would take a look at our guide at thewealthelevator.com/bank for more information on that. The next bucket, number 2, is more that midterm year, 3 to 10 years, call it. These are your bonds and your preferred equity positions in real estate that you get a little bit higher yield, and it's still moderately safe in the middle there. And your bucket 3, now this is still your growth money. Now, some people think that in your golden years, in your decumulation stage, that you're not growing anything. But this is where the asset allocation mix is up to you. Now, technically, I'm not allowed to advise on asset allocation mix because I'm not a certified financial planner, which I think is a little silly. I would say that I am not here to advise anyone because I haven't seen any type of normality when you really get to talk to people and get financially naked with people and see where are they allocating from more growth stuff, asymmetric stuff, to more of their safety, cash flowing stuff. People are all over the place. especially in the alternative investor realm. The next thing here is to set your giving goals. Don't wait till your kids are 60 to give them money. Strategic giving now is more important. This is detailed a lot more in the Bill Perkins book, Die with Zero. So I would suggest taking a look at that book. The only personal overlay that I would say is there's a certain magical number around age 35, maybe plus or minus 5 years, where your kids are essentially who they are going to be. If they're cheap and frugal and you give them a few $1,000,000 at that point, they've already defined who they are as people. So you see a lot of trusts use that 35 age as a trigger point to release more money from the fund. Sometimes people get a little cute where they give a little release at year 20, assuming they're going to college, or 20, 30, but they typically give most of the funds away by age 35 or 40. Now, I think it is a complete mistake to not give anything until age 60, and there's a big tragedy with that. I don't want to give away the Bill Perkins book, but essentially, he used an example where there was a substantial, I think it was a couple $1,000,000 that was held back, and here their offspring, now a lady in their 50s, didn't get access to the money. And had a couple of, I think it was a single mother, had a couple kids, and throughout their entire life, they didn't have access to this nice little windfall of money, a couple $1,000,000. And that was when they really needed the money the most. Not when the mom was 50 years old and then the two kids were already off and financially on themselves. It was too much, too late. So these are I think the things that traditionally we hold on to and we don't question. All we're saying is just question it and just customize it for yourself based off your own values. Also discussed in the Bill Perkins book is this fear where we're going to end up on our deathbed. Nobody's going to like us. Nobody's going to pay for us because we have no money, and we have no money to pay for our remaining health costs. As we all know, hospice is very expensive. Now, if you're in the $3 to $5 million zone and you're worried about it, I would just say just self-insure your way through this and just get a long-term care insurance policy, or what the cool kids will do is they'll get a long-term care rider on your life insurance. That's what I personally do. If you need a referral to a life insurance agent to do this, you can always go to thewealthelevator.com/vendor. We've always got vendors for CPAs, lawyers, etc. there. None of this is financial advice, but I think this is just one of these things to pursue yourself down to alleviate some of these mental concerns. The idea here is to spend with intention, not guilt. A lot of you folks have ran 45 miles in a 26-mile long marathon. I now know how it is because I just ran my first marathon at 9 hours. Obviously not a runner. But a lot of you guys will save up $5 million only to find out that you really needed $3 million. And I would probably gamble that you would probably end up with several $1,000,000 of excess upon your passing, because we don't know when you're going to pass away. We all hear stories of people passing away a few years after they retire and not able to do that ever so important transfer of money to experience gain, paying for experiences. But make sure you align this with your values. I see a lot of folks taking 6 months to 12 months to rejigger their life after not having to go to a day job 40 hours a week. I see a very more of a transfer to simplicity, doing house chores, fixing up the house, which really doesn't require too much money. So that's the ironic thing. When you have a high-powered family of 4 and you're doing all these things running around, you may spend $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 per month. But when you are retired and you don't have the stress and the frustration purchases of having to go to a job, 100% bandwidth there, you tend to spend a lot less. And you realize that a lot of things that you could spend your money on, you don't, because that doesn't drive what you enjoy at that stage of life. And these are just my observations from seeing people not cross over the rainbow and die on me, but the people who've crossed over from having to trade time for money to now financially coasting through life. There's a great imagery depiction of what I'm talking about here. If you wanted to have this conversation with your spouse in the master class, I believe it is in the taxes section where it's a discussion on core capital. So check out that video there if you're interested in that. But hopefully, this gave you some ideas to come up with your own retirement simulation. I think it really comes alive when you get around other people who are also on this faster track to financial independence. So, hopefully, we'll see you at a future retreat one of these days or in person. But with that, I'm now getting into the 10th year of this podcast. If you haven't yet, please leave a review. That's how people find us and find our network and community. And I will leave you all with Mela Kalikimaka. You have to sing it. Go.
Okay, just one word, but not all of it. Okay. The Melakaliki Maka is a thing to say on a bright Hawaiian Christmas day. That's the island greeting that we send to you from the land where palm trees swim. Hearing all the Christmas will be brief and bright. The sun was on my day and all the stars at night. No, I know.
That's it?
Yeah.